Yeah, look, in real estate, there's a lot of storytelling, right? You're here telling stories, we're telling stories. And at the end of the day, you can put all the numbers that you want on the business plan, but you have to go out and tell that story to an investor, to a bank, to a municipality, and ultimately to somebody who's gonna to buy it in the future.
As Paredes Têm Ouvidos, podcast sobre tudo, onde nada fica entre quatro paredes, com João Velez e Lucas Soulard.
Olá a todos, bem-vindos a mais um episódio. Hoje temos cá o Peter. O Peter é americano e achou que vir para Portugal era uma boa ideia. Ainda está a tentar perceber se a premissa inicial estava certa, mas eu acho que é um convidado que nos vem dar aqui um ângulo muito interessante. Teremos que fazer, obviamente, uma parte deste podcast, ou grande parte do podcast, em inglês. O Peter tem um background relacionado com investimento imobiliário que já fazia nos Estados Unidos. Chegou cá, gostou, apaixonou-se pela cidade e agora obviamente quer continuar a fazer aquilo que já fazia nos Estados Unidos, mas em Portugal, e acho que é um excelente convidado para nos vir falar sobre as diferenças entre investir nos Estados Unidos e em Portugal, sobre quais é que são as grandes barreiras, as dificuldades encontradas, o que é que levou a escolher Portugal no meio de tantas cidades europeias para ir, e acho que esta conversa vai ser muito rica por aí e não só. Concordas, Lucas?
Acho que sim. Falas português?
Se falo português, mas acho que vai ser melhor para todos se fazemos em inglês. Mas percebo, estou a aprender português. Então.
How is that to learn Portuguese? Easy?
I wouldn't say it was easy. It's easy necessarily, but I already spoke Spanish, so that was a big help to learn Portuguese. I started studying with Brazilians first, so then the sound is different to learn as well too. But no, people speak so much good English here that it's almost difficult to practice sometimes, which is a good thing.
Yeah. And the experience so far, when did you first came to Portugal?
First came 2.5 years ago, but the first year wasn't totally committed to stay, and I think after being here, making lots of friends, feeling like the vibe of living here, we decided to stay. So my girlfriend and I decided to figure out, okay, how do we work here and how do we make a life and work in the real estate market as well too.
So the first move was for what? Holidays, digital nomads, or come here and maybe see?
First was for holidays, yes. And then after we decided to come for a year, that was, I would say, like temporary. So we were working a little bit like digital nomads. Of course, real estate is not really a digital nomad industry, but for the moment I was able to make it work with my partners back in the US in a project that was really at the very beginning that was all on paper. And then after that year and we decided to stay, then I started to work on more projects here.
So you started basically working from here to projects in the States, so continue doing what you were doing before coming here?
Yes, I mean, effectively, this is like a larger scale of real estate development where we had a large team of architects and engineers and consultants, and I had a team of project manager as well in the US that could effectively move the project along. But of course, it's all on paper. It's government meetings, it's architectural plans. It's not the hardest thing to manage remotely because we weren't under construction, and I had a project manager for what was under construction. So it was a little difficult, but it was okay in the beginning. And now I've transitioned almost all of my work to being here in Portugal and in Europe.
In terms of scale, what kind of investments were you working on in the States?
Yeah, so in the US, our company, we were doing a lot of mixed-use projects, so working in an urban area. This was, for the most part, in Baltimore, so near Washington, D.C. But a scale, anything from a small restaurant or retail space, or we even did a project that was just row homes, so individual houses, like attached houses. We did 30 of them at once, all the way up to $200 million dollar mixed-use projects where we're developing out of the ground, assembling a lot of parcels together, sometimes working with historic buildings, not quite as historic as the ones here, but historic for the US, which could be 100 years old. But really, oftentimes trying to find ways to make places that people wanted to live, to play, to shop, and also to work. So this was really our specialty in what we did, but really a range of scale, because I think you diversify your risk and you can grow from smaller projects to larger ones.
You did that for how many years?
For 10 years.
10 years doing this. Okay, so you arrive in Portugal. You are still working with that team, doing some projects like digitally, which you could manage, especially at the beginning of the project. And you arrive and you decide, maybe I should invest in Portugal. Did that came to mind like right away? Was something that's kind of built up? How was that process?
I mean, the first thing I thought was, even as a tourist, walking around Lisbon, looking at the beautiful neighborhoods, the beautiful historic buildings, and the amount of vacant ones, and thinking, how could this be the case that so many beautiful buildings are underused, not used at all, vacant, especially under, eventually coming to understand the need for housing. So that was my first shock experience, and then to understand a little bit of what's behind that and why these buildings are vacant or underused, and how you could be involved in the market to actually unlock these.
And what were the main conclusions on why that happened?
Well, I think for many reasons that probably many of us know, right? You have some that are owned by the governments, you have some that are owned by families and complicated inheritance situations, and perhaps others where there's just no incentive to do anything, right? Very low annual real estate taxes. So what's the incentive to redevelopment if it's almost free to hold it?
Comparing to the States, this is curious because in France it's the same, right?
It's the same.
Here, to maintain property is really cheap. The tax is really low. And I agree with you, that's one of the points that make families don't decide on anything. So they keep it sometimes for 2 generations, not deciding what to do because they pay close to zero taxes. How does that work in the States compared to here?
So it's completely the reverse. And I learned this the hard way, buying an apartment and renovating it just for myself and my girlfriend, now my wife, to live in, right? So you pay a much higher transfer tax or taxes up front when you buy.
In Portugal?
In Portugal, right? And then much lower taxes on an annual basis afterwards. And in the US, and I think in some other places, it's reversed, where the fee when you buy it is much lower because it's trying to incentivize more people to be able to buy and sell houses, right? Which I think is an important thing in Portugal as well too. You want not give people such a high barrier to entry to buy apartments, but it is higher here. There's programs to lower it, but initially it's high. And then it's a much higher cost to hold, over time. And so this causes people to think a little bit harder around if they're investing, how do they get money, high enough rent to make it worthwhile to pay these taxes, or to find ways to offset it. So yeah, this is a big difference between the Portuguese market and other markets, is very low cost annual taxes.
To keep the property, basically.
To keep it. Yeah.
And you would say, like, apart from the fact that you detected that there were a lot of empty houses or low on use, sometimes you go and you see a building that is like, you see a few people are living there, but most of it is empty. Apart from that, what were kind of like the other biggest shocks that you had on ways to work, bureaucracy, time to build, time of construction? Like how did you felt at the beginning?
I mean, I think at the beginning I was really curious to understand why things are the way they are. And it's been a really interesting learning process to sort of unravel this, right? So back to the vacant buildings for 1 minute, right? Another reason why these buildings are not developed is because of the time and complexity to do the licensing, to figure out how to do a project there, right? So, well, why is this the case? Well, it's different in different parts of the country, and there's a certain level of local knowledge that you need of how to manage this process, right? And these are all sort of disincentives to develop, but I think for people that do come to understand them, right, or work with the right partners, these are ways to unlock value through the market. I think the other thing that I found too is, I think if you look at the last decade or so in Portugal, you have a market, let's just say a residential property market, that's been continuously rising in a very strong way. And I think when you see that, you have a lot of people say, well, maybe I'll get into the market. and you can have quite a bit of appreciation, but you have a lot of people doing what is kind of the simple type of project, right? So you have apartments, you renovate apartments, you sell them. Okay, right? Simple. When you have this rising values, you don't have a lot of creativity in the market, because the creativity where you say, well, okay, maybe this is going to be something else. I'm going to split one apartment to two apartments. I'm going to demolish and build something new. I'm going to change it in some way. This is when you're trying to find an extra margin, an extra yield, right? And that's not really been happening, because
The
people are
market
saying
appreciates
the market's
a lot.
appreciating. You say, well, if I just do the simple thing, then I'm going to make money. But I think as the market maybe matures, right, and all the simple things get done and the buildings get fixed up, then I think there's going to be more pressure for something creative, right? Maybe more rental housing, right? There's not a lot of big build to rent projects, right? Or student housing, you have a little bit, not as
It
much.
started to grow in the last
Senior
few years,
housing, right?
yeah.
These different ways to create more rentability, more creativity in the market, and I hope to see them.
So you buy a house here, renovate. How was the experience?
You did it yourself, right?
Yes, not the work
The work
personally,
itself.
but yes, we did it ourselves. It was, I will say, a relatively smooth process. I think if you we worked with a good lawyer and a great contractor, and these were things that helped us a lot. But I think also having a little knowledge of the market is helpful to manage. Well, what are the pitfalls and things to look out for? It was a very interesting process. So many things in the US are very automated and standardized. So you don't think very hard about your bank loan. You don't think very hard about the closing, right? The escritura. But here it's very personal. You do it in person. You talk to everybody. You get on the phone, right? It was a good process overall, but it was very not so automated and standardized.
So you felt you had like a bigger need for knowledge in every step of the way, because things vary a lot, and there is a lot of like small details in Portugal that maybe there in the States it's more like standardized and automated.
That's exactly right. And I think, look, it's always healthy to be a skeptic, right? I think in real estate and in many industries, if you start with the skeptical perspective, that, well, I don't know, so I'm gonna really make sure that I can figure it out, get the right answer, ask the question not one time, but 3 times. This is the right perspective.
And to different people.
And to different, yes,
Yeah.
not 3 times to the same person, 3 times to 3 different people. No, maybe Tuesday I'll try.
Se até agora estás a gostar da conversa, não te esqueças de subscrever o canal e ativar as notificações.
I think taking this skeptical perspective is a good one, and I think even more so in the Portuguese market, because you really can get different answers, and maybe the answer is in the gray area. So to understand all the perspectives, you ask a few extra times, and I think this was really helpful for us in our apartment.
Like how was it to feel there were so many gray areas in real estate in Portugal? Did you felt unsafe? Did you felt just a need, like if I speak with 10 people and I get like 10 different answers, I might get there, so maybe I even have an advantage versus all the other foreigners that maybe just arrived and they feel scared and they run away? Did you felt like there was a need to explore the gray areas and understand how things work in Portugal?
100% for me, yeah, because like I said, the skeptical perspective, and I say, well, if I don't know it and I'm getting 2 different answers, I need to spend a little bit more time to figure out what the right answer is. And for me, I'm willing to take a little bit maybe more risk, because, well, I work in real estate development and I understand a little bit more. But I think for many people, especially foreigners, they would say, well, I'm scared of this, right? And I don't think it's necessarily something to be scared of so much as it is to say, well, you need to find the right partners, you need to investigate a little bit more, take a little bit more time, pay somebody with the expertise to figure it out. I mean, I think this is the right perspective. But also, it means there's opportunities in the market.
Exactly.
If there's some gray area and you say, well, maybe if we do it this way, we sort of figure out the right way to do it, then there can be an opportunity on the other side because other people are scared away. Yeah. So I think there's 2 sides of the coin.
Yeah, and I asked this, like maybe you guys can elaborate a little bit more, but I find something, I also have some foreign friends. I got introduced to you by Lucas, so you guys were on the same group of friends, and I know that you have several Portuguese friends. So how important was it to catch up with people like Lucas that have a lot of knowledge of the market, and some others like, I don't know, Luis, and some people that I'm sure they help you on the process? Did you came to the conclusion that being friends with Portuguese was really important in the real estate market, or was that just an extra that happened?
I mean, I think to just start to understand the ways of working and the ways of thinking, it is, right? Like, I'll give you some other examples, right? Like, you know, I've worked a little bit in the commercial market as well too, and talk to so many brokers, and you maybe work with people that represent this office space or something else, and it's like, nobody's calling me back. Well, what's going on? Well, there's something specific to the market of, well, there's not really a lot of licensing for commercial brokers, there's not really a lot of licensing for residential brokers, and there's just a ton of them, and it's not a very professional, you know, part of the industry, right? That gives a little bit of context to the work. And I think learning these things is very important. It could be talking to friends, it could be, you know, working with somebody that is giving you this kind of inside knowledge.
Did you felt, for example, when you did, you were getting a little bit back, but I think this is important. When you were doing the renovations in your place, how did you get to find the contractor? Because you said the contractor was really good. How did you end up there?
I think, like, a lot of times it's not always something scientific. Like, I ran a process and I interviewed 10, right? It's, I think, sometimes a little bit more of a feeling, right? So in this case, it was a friend of ours who was also a foreigner. I think you can have this sometimes where, like, okay, well, I'm American, so I knew an American that worked with this person, so then that's an extra
layer of security,
right? But the truth was, she was fantastic because she really understood what I meant to take care of everything and to say, well, align on a vision and sort out the details, right? And not bringing back all the details to me to say, well, this isn't it, you know, it just kind of got solved. But I think really it came a little bit more from a gut feeling, and then this level of trust from people you knew that had worked with them. And I would say that's not just for foreigners, that's for everything, right? Like, if you have somebody that you really trust and they vouch for that contractor, that person, that architect, then that's, to me, always the best place to start.
And follow up on that question, did you thought it was difficult to get that network in Lisbon? How do you feel like Lisbon is in terms of, like, you just arrived, like you know someone, or like you have this friend that came like 2 years ago? Was it hard, the experience of like getting to know people, getting like the social part that also brings the recommendations and all that side rolling?
I mean, for me, I'm a very social person, so I think of it as just kind of the way I live life, to meet people. But I do think that it's hard to, let's say you want to meet somebody that does X, right? Something specific. It's never like right at that moment that you meet that person. Sometimes, but rare, right? Usually it's like, oh, well, I was looking for this, and then right at another moment I was introduced to somebody, so let me call that person back. But I do think building this network, it can be difficult for sure in a place that's not where you are from. But I think it's important work to do to be able to have a network or the right people in place, so you say, well, I need something, and who do I call?
Yeah, it's interesting because did you, for example, in your group of friends there are a few Portuguese. Mm-hmm. Did you felt there was a difference, we were speaking about the difficulties in the real estate market of like gray areas, bureaucracy, and all that. Do you think like getting to be friends? Because I'm asking you this because I have a lot of foreign friends that they don't have a lot of Portuguese friends, even though some of them are living here for some years, and maybe some of them plan to stay here for the long run. So because maybe the person that is watching this is trying to or thinking about moving to Portugal. Did you see like some characteristics in the Portuguese culture that make it harder, easier to be friends with Portuguese?
That's such an interesting question. I love the question. I would say what I love about Portuguese is I feel like people are generally actually quite open and friendly. I wouldn't say that I made Portuguese friends immediately. For sure, if you're an expat in any place, you make expat friends first because they're the friends that aren't there with their second grade friends, right?
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
open to new ones. But I think from there, definitely I had a desire to connect with more Portuguese people and to make some friends. And I think it is beneficial, right? I'll give just a general example. We spoke a little bit about gray areas, right? And I think if I'm coming from a market like the United States, or it could be from Germany or the UK, where it is more regulated, it is more clear cut, you have fewer gray areas. Sometimes the gray area can be stressful. And people say, well, I don't know. What if I don't know if it's going to happen for sure, then I won't invest or I won't do it. But then maybe you're having a beer with a Portuguese person and they say, well, it's normal, right? To get the comfort that it's okay to deal with the gray area and that you will get to the right answer, but it may take a little bit more time, and to let you kind of take a deep breath and say, well, this is one of the ways that the market works. I'm not going to change it. I need to work with it. I think this was a big benefit.
Going now to real estate investing and like next steps for you. We have a few things going on, but I would like also to have your view on like what type of projects are you looking for? Because as you were saying, you have the commercial side, and we also have like a project going on that maybe we can speak later. What kind of opportunities are you looking at currently at the market, and what current projects do you have going on, and fields of opportunities that you see? Because I think when you are from the outside of Portugal and you arrive, you were speaking about something that maybe because I've been in real estate since more or less 10 years ago and the market was always growing, I didn't go to explore the creative part of the investment, like thinking maybe this building can be something different, or maybe like you were saying, transform these 2 apartments into 4 and maybe have smaller units, whatever it is. Because as you were saying, the market was showing people they were right, because even if they were wrong, time would correct that in the long run.
That's right.
So if they did a bad investment in 2015, in 17 they were already making like maybe 30%. Yeah. So they were like, I'm a genius.
There were no bad investments in 2015.
Yeah. The only bad investment was not buying. That was the classic. But just before your question, that is really good. So just to have the timeline. So you was still working for your American company, decide to move to Portugal, buy a flat, an apartment, do the renovation, and when it was the moment that you say, well, maybe I will invest here as an investor more than just invest as finding a house?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that the timeline was, we moved here, we stayed for the year, we decided to stay. Once we decided to stay, I think I kind of had a sense of what you said from 2015, of like, well, if I'm gonna stay, I want to put my money in the market. I want to invest and have a property to live in. And doing the math, at least what we were looking at, it was working in our favor. So that was step one. And then I think after that, basically the position I was in was, I said to myself, look, I have 2 options. I love working in real estate. I particularly love working in real estate development, right? Investing into development projects or developing, right? And because I love to see the change and be part of the change. And to me, the change is also where the most value creation is. If you just put paint on the wall, maybe you make a little bit more, but that's not changing very much. It's not really unlocking a higher value. So then I said, well, I have 2 options. One is I could work for a company, and 2 is I could do it myself. And I started to have some conversations with people to do some consulting, because this is another way into the world as well too. You can help somebody doing with what the asset that they have that doesn't require you to put all the money into the asset, right? And so I started doing a little bit of this, using the knowledge I had, using the connections I had, and then from there meeting you guys and saying, well, let's go a level deeper, right? Like, let's do development, let's invest into this. Like, to me, I think it was a natural transition where when I said to myself, you know what, I've done the company thing for 10 years and now I'm ready to do it on my own. It was a natural thing. And I think a lot of people are in this scenario, right? Like, they work for a company, it could be in real estate, it could be in something else, and they want to find ways to go deeper on their own, right? Use the assets you have, use the connections you have. You don't need to do it all at once. But yeah, that at a certain point there was a mind switch.
And it's interesting because you decided to do it in a market in which you have less knowledge, and things are more complicated and there are more gray areas. But maybe at the same time you felt you were here and you wanted to do something, I don't know, local. Did you felt there was more opportunities here?
I mean, look, the job of the real estate developer, right, is, I'll take an analogy and put it in terms of football, right, is to not figure out where the ball is, but to figure out where the ball is going to be in 2 years, in 5 years, right? And in big, you could say, well, look, you could know New York, you could know the US, you could know Paris or whatever, right? And all the real estate dollars are going there, right? In a certain sense, in Portugal, many are going to Lisbon as well too. But the places where you have more unfound opportunity, right, available opportunity, are where the best value is going to be the best, right? And so to me, it's about saying, how can you put your knowledge together with your partners or the right place to unlock something that other people are not seeing? They don't see that the ball is going to be there, right? And to me, I felt like, well, I put enough into the network in Lisbon, found the right people to work with, and other partners and other people I could consult with, where I said, I don't know everything, but if you wait till you know everything, you're for sure not going to do anything.
You're never going to start, yeah.
And you think that having this American vision about the city, about the moving of the city, because the speed that the city on the United States move is totally different than Europe. As you was explaining, you create some big areas where, and you see a land and say, well, it will be some commercial part, residential, and all services and all kind of activity. But have this vision here and take the American vision to Portugal, give you some angles that people working on real estate in Portugal don't see, because they are focused on something like residential, a way of do it, and not have another focus on other visions?
I think so. I think that it's not about saying, well, I did it one way, so if I would just take that way and redo it here, then it's also going to be good. I think it's more about taking the lessons and the learnings from something, and you say, well, how could I apply them in a way, right? So for me, like, I love these kinds of mixed use projects, right? Combining all of these elements. There's many ways it can work. It can work around a stadium that has a bunch of empty space next to it. It could work near an office building, a metro station, a historic market, right? Something like this. And I would love to I'm working to get deeper into projects like that, because I think they can be really cool. But it's not just about what you're building, it can also be about how you do it, right? So it can be, what's common in the US is there's people are putting much more debt onto properties, right? Taking larger leverage, right? And that can unlock different kinds of things, more construction, more creative. Maybe you're doing something that has a little bit more long-term vision because of the timeline of the mortgage or the debt that you take out, right? So how could you bring some of those things? Or like I was saying earlier, right, like looking at a residential building, say, what are besides just renovating these apartments and selling them, what are the 20 things that you could do here that might be even a little bit more profitable and unlock the value out of it? And I think the more outside foreign investors that come and work in the Portuguese market, and the more international brands that come, and the more that the market even internally finds a demand for more yield, for more rentability, that you're going to find more and more of those models. And I think that's exciting.
Do you have a few that you have spot on that you think are going to be something to look at for the next years? I
mean, I think probably one of the biggest ones that a lot of people could say is like just build to rent, right? To build an apartment, to find financing that backs up and also like the legal protections for financial owners for larger scale rental building. It doesn't even have to be large scale. You don't even have a lot of small scale ones where people are really renting. And I think this really helps with the affordability situation that you have in Portugal too, because you don't have a big barrier to entry. I think senior living and senior care is really interesting, both for Portuguese as well as for foreigners, right? You have a beautiful country, great weather, great, very safe, right? I think there will be huge opportunities that maybe Germans, Americans, Brits will continue to want to be here, and maybe we'll need elder care, and there's a great medical system. So how do you build off of that? I think in hospitality, it's a market that's actually very well developed here in a very creative way. And there's a little bit of co-living. You have digital nomads, and I think there's an opportunity to build off of that. Student living is a very similar thing.
And they are growing a lot in the last
growing a lot too. The last thing that I find really interesting is like sports and activities, right? You have big stadiums, incredible amount of fan support, right? And I think there are some project going on maybe around Benfica, but it's a really cool opportunity to create places that people want to be, not just for the certain number of games per year, but like all the time.
All the weeks, every day, like having something going on.
Exactly, right? And you can create living out of them. You can create hotels, places people want to be, around concerts and game days and cool places to hang out. So I think this is a very cool opportunity as well.
That's cool, because usually we are just thinking like we buy, we build, we sell,
Yeah.
that's it. I think, like one of the things behind, and I'm sure you understand this, it's like when you speak about build to rent, now the government is trying to do some stuff.
There's been some news.
Yeah, to make it better, and hopefully that will happen. But it's curious because you see, for example, the students' rental growing. Why? Because every 6 months they are leaving, or every 12 months they are leaving. And landlords, so ultimately the people that own the building, they feel safe because they don't have to go against all the protection of people that are renting and all this, because as you know, like a lot of our history comes from more to the left side, to the socialist side, so you have a lot of protection on people renting. And what that did for a long period of time was to make landlords don't want to be landlords, because they never know when the rules will be changed, and maybe the rents will be blocked, and all this will be happen at the same time. While in students you don't have this, so that's, I think, in my opinion, that's why you saw some big money going on into that direction, right? Because investors feel much safer. So I think politically, I hope the environment will help for those kind of projects to exist, because I think it must start there. Because as you know, some big funds from Europe, that when they look at Portugal, they don't see enough safety in order to invest in build to rent.
Right. That's right. I think it's an excellent point, right? Like the government has to help create the conditions for something to be successful. And I think student housing and build to rent's a good example. Another one is affordable housing, right? So what is the government doing for affordable housing, right? So I've worked in many projects in the US that have some affordable component, and there's always some kind of incentive, right? It doesn't have to be a crazy one, like we pay for the whole project. It's a tax benefit. It's a subsidy on the capital that's needed for the project. And to me, when it's to look at some of the reforms that are done to create affordability in the market, it's not just about people buying houses, but I think renting and helping bring capital, investment capital, and developers incentivized to create affordable housing is important to have kind of a balanced sector between rentals, houses to buy, and things like this.
Have you seen a big difference on the time of construction between the United States and Portugal?
I think on small to mid-sized projects, you wouldn't see a huge difference in the time to build, to be completely honest. I think where you might see a bigger gap is in the larger scale projects, like infrastructure projects, where you really need specialized set of knowledge, staff, equipment, etc. To me, I think the bigger risk for investment in Portugal from an investor's perspective is the licensing. The fact that you can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to 4 years to being told you actually can't do any of the things that by law you should be able to do, but we thought it was a gray area and you kind of didn't know the right guy and you didn't hire the right architect. To me, that's probably the biggest thing that's causing larger investors to be nervous about coming to Portugal.
So you think really Portugal need to work on the licensing part?
The timing and the consistency, I think, is the biggest thing. And the construction will come. Construction is just a market-based thing, right? Licensing is in the hands of the government, but construction is the market. If the project needs a bigger contractor that can deliver quicker and more consistently, they'll hire a Spanish one. And then eventually the Portuguese ones will grow and learn. Right. And there are very big, good Portuguese ones as well, too.
So comparing, so we go on specifics. For a permit, what is usual for you to deal in this case Baltimore, because I think that's the reality there that you know better.
Yeah, and it is also in the States by municipality and such, so you have a similar kind of system where it's very distributed and very local, but still the time for a permit for a new construction should be somewhere between about 3 months. 6 months maybe maximum if you're doing something super crazy.
So that's what you are used to?
Yes. The whole process takes longer. You have to design, you maybe have to do some site and stormwater and other things like this. But actually, once you put the building permit in, 3 months.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because for the capital to be stopped for you don't know how long, because you have to buy the piece of real estate, then you may wait 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, 24, you don't really know. When you go on the business plan, you look at the number and you are quite, what should I put here? And then you speak with your Portuguese friends and they will tell you, if it's Lisbon, more or less this, if it's Sintra, more or less that, but you don't have the answer. And I think that must be scary for someone used to that timeline.
If somebody says, look, it's going to take a while for you to get your permit, it's going to take 18 months or 24 months, and at the end, you're sure you're going to get a permit and it's going to allow you to build whatever you want to build. That's fine. You just put it in the business plan, you put the timing there, you understand how long your equity is going to sit waiting to start construction, and that's no problem. But the hardest part is the uncertainty. Uncertainty. If and when.
You think that's the really big risk or the major risk for investing in Portugal?
I think that's one of the biggest reasons why some investors would sit on the sidelines. There's others, right? You have questions of, what's the market, the power, the purchasing power to build it, the difference between the cost of construction, which is rising, and the cost of that you can sell it, and what's the difference there. But I think the biggest thing is uncertainty around and licensing, and that foreigners and foreign capital might say, well, we can have a local partner, but how do we know that it's going to happen?
And I think that applies also for rent. It's the same, because you don't know if now next elections, maybe PS wins the elections and they revert everything that PS did, and they will go more on the protection of everything changes, and maybe you did a business plan for 20 years because you need time in order to make your money back when you are renting, and you did this project thinking that the rules will be like this and the taxes will be like this, but then after 4 years everything changes, and your business plan, instead of getting your capital back, I don't know, in the 8th or 9th year, now it takes 17 years, and just because of a change, just because of uncertainty.
That's right. That's really hard. And by the way, it's not unique to Portugal. You have rental changes in other European capitals, in London, even in San Francisco and places in the US that affect this as well too. But I think Portugal is starting from a place that's very tenant friendly, that's always going to create trouble for bigger landlords. And then on top of that, you have the last 10 years of property price appreciation, which makes the rentability more tricky. But I think it should, in my mind, it should be in the government's goal to find ways to create more affordability and stability, especially for renters, because it's the most affordable way to get an apartment if you don't have one.
Yeah. One question that I want to make you, because it's something that I listen a lot of times, back in the days before the crisis in Portugal, it was known that you would buy your house, but for your mortgage on your house, you would also buy the car, the dog, everything around it, and everything will be just a mortgage of your house. So what that meant was the leverage was probably more than 100% back in Portugal, which was maybe even too much. Not maybe, it was too much. No one controlled it. The banks were kind of okay until shit hits the fan, and it started in the States. In Portugal, it shows up not in 2008, but more in 2009, 10, 11. It was like a few years after it happened in the States. And after that, the banks here got really conservative. What this means, they are always scared about borrowing too much money, too much leverage on projects, and this applies for residential, someone asking for a loan to buy a house, and also applies for companies that are developing. In such a way that now, a lot of times you need a lot of equity in the projects in order for them to happen. Which I know, compared to the States, it's very different. So what's your take here?
You're 100% right. The banks are giving you a lot smaller percentage of the total project of what you're either investing or developing here in Portugal. And I'll give you an example, just to talk with some real numbers, right? Like I would be used to for, let's say you're buying a building, renovating it, selling apartments, or building it from ground up, that you might be able to get somewhere around 80% of the cost of the project in debt in the US, where here you might get 50 to 60%, right? And it's going to depend on some other factors. That difference is huge. It's a big, big difference. So that's I would say a structural question of the finance system of Portugal. I'm not a banker smart enough to tell you why or how that's going to change. But it's a constraint of the market, let's say. Maybe as the market develops 5-10 years from now, banks have more successful projects that capital will loosen a little bit. I'm not sure. Or maybe there's foreign banks that would lend towards Portuguese property. I don't know, but it's a real constraint of development for sure. You have to take a lower return on your equity and more capital up front.
Yeah, make up for it. Yeah.
I'll share a story actually related to this, which is funny. I think the banks are tighter, but they're still not that tight. So when I took a renovation loan for my apartment, I assumed that I would submit invoices and submit the work that's been done, and then no. They still are basically just underwriting the value of your apartment, and then you're going to do some work, and then the value is going to be higher. And I think they send one person once or twice to inspect and look at it. So I think you have a banking sector that's a little bit more reliant on sort of traditional, more conservative metrics, as opposed to having the level of creativity to say, we're going to lend for something specific. We have this product that allows you to leverage government funding for affordable housing to bring more investment, right? So when you talk about the creativity within the real estate development sector, the financial piece is a huge part of it as well too, because you could have the greatest ideas in the world, but you can't support it 80% with investor equity. You need a loan for it, but the bank says, we don't get it. And I think this is something that needs to develop further as well too. It can be a constraint.
Yeah, I think in the end, the creativity in terms of investment must be followed by creativity in financing the same investment, which in Portugal we know, even if you try to show something different, something easy but different but easy to understand to a bank, it's a big problem in their heads. And they go to administration, they show, and they say, too much risk. It's kind of how it goes here. Sometimes you might go with a really viable business plan, but it's not what they want to be putting money on. They won't do it, even though the numbers make sense. We have this reality.
Yeah, they just want the thing very simple. Well, you buy, okay. But when we arrive with the business plan with a little bit more of creativity and another kind of project, they need maybe go to the people that's making the exotical. And no, it's not exotical. It's classic, but it's not just buy the building. It's maybe buy the building, buy a company, and at the same time make this project. And it's not just residential. It can be residential, service, and other things. But yeah, they don't want to see. We have this problem with the gas station, for example, where for us it was too crazy, and yeah, now we see some new
Platforms
platforms coming here, crowdfunding, and
some from Spain that are coming here
yeah.
to have this more creativity side of the financing of real estate investment. But it's still, I would say, like most of the financing market, it's still really conservative and back in the Stone Age.
That's right. And so this is the challenge. You want to do something more creative, then you need to find a match between a project, a piece of land, a building, the capital, which includes the bank as well as your investor, most creativity or most risk on the investor, plus the licensing aspect, because you have to show this to municipality and say, I'm doing this thing, right? So you have to get everybody online and you have to tell them the story of why this is good, or maybe not as risky as they think.
Which is quite hard to do, but we are here in order to try to, I don't know, move a little stone, and maybe it will go like a stone after a stone, and in a few years we might have like a different reality in Portugal. At least we hope so. We work for that.
Yeah, look, in real estate, there's a lot of storytelling, right? You're here telling stories, we're telling stories, and at the end of the day, you can put all the numbers that you want on the business plan, but you have to go out and tell that story to an investor, to a bank, to a municipality, and ultimately to somebody who's gonna to buy it in the future. And that's where you can, that's where the success comes. That's where the value comes.
Yeah, we don't make real estate, we are storytellers.
That's why having a voice online is so important, and in the end that's why we are also doing this podcast, like, because I think like the change must start somewhere, and sometimes it starts with the normal people doing the normal things. Once the government doesn't work that way, maybe it should be the people bringing in the change and forcing the other entities to change as well.
Yeah, and by the way, starting with one apartment, small capital, small building, this is the way to prove that you can do the creative, interesting stuff or do something a little bit differently, right? It's usually not the biggest guy that's going to do it first. So this is where it starts. I totally agree.
Talking about changings, in the last 2 years and a half, what are the big changing that you see in Lisbon? And it can be real estate, but also coffees, shops, everything, or neighborhoods.
Yeah. I think you see the development of the city continuing in ways that are really cool, like great restaurants, neighborhoods that maybe people weren't talking about before, are now talking about, are really exciting for people to move to, where stores and great restaurants are expanding, and that's cool to see. I think you see areas outside the city, in the southern margin, towards Cascais, out in different directions, like developing, which is natural, right? Like you want to see the city grow in these ways. It needs to be supported by public transit. It would be really nice if they would finish the metro, but we'll see. And I think that you continue to see foreigners come and want to live and invest, which is a great thing. Government's made some changes to the different incentive packages, and for example, the real estate prices have continued to go up, maybe not quite as fast, but at a slower rate. So you still have pressure on the housing market. But I think also you were looking at a city that was starting from such a lower level of housing prices and real estate pricing compared to all these other European capitals that Lisbon is not that far behind from in many ways. And so in a way, I feel like Lisbon's had this kind of catching up that's continuing.
If we go specific, because I think like usually the places where you want to live will also be the places in which you want to invest. Not always, but you can understand this. Like, can you go specific on neighborhoods that you find interesting in Lisbon? Like some places in which you see the cool concepts showing up, the cool restaurants, like you listen to your friends speaking about it. Like, what would you say are the places to look at?
I mean, I think some of the neighborhoods like Anjos, Alvalade, Arroios, like on this part of the city, Penha da França.
On the green metro line?
Yeah, I think are really interesting. Of course, the green metro line is going to be combined when they finish the project, which will be really interesting. I think from like a real estate yield perspective, when you look at like Cacilhas and Almada on that side of the bridge. There's just so many people move there, and a lot of price appreciation, because of just the demand for housing, and people want something affordable, but it's still only 8-minute, ferry ride from Caixa Sodré in the center of Lisbon. I think like Alcântara and then Ajuda and the neighborhoods in that direction, are really interesting and exciting. Continue to see that price growth. So yeah, I mean, if you look farther beyond the city, what's happening in Comporta, what's happened over the last few years is, I think, if you would live in Lisbon and see it, is crazy. And I think it's still the tip of the iceberg in terms of the amount of development that's going to happen down in that area as well.
Now, easy question. Top 3 of restaurants in Lisbon.
Top 3 restaurants. Wow.
Yeah, I know that you like food, so
right on
and
the
you like to
spot.
cook as well, right?
So I love to cook.
I'm still waiting on a dinner invitation.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's double on the spot.
Now it's on camera.
Well, actually, this is not a restaurant, but speaking of cooking, one of my favorite places, and it's also good for me to practice Portuguese, is the Mercado 31 de Janeiro in Saldanha, which is an amazing place. And I tell foreigners all the time, and actually locals, because not everybody that's been from Lisbon's even been there, that this is truly an amazing place for really high quality Portuguese produce, fish, meat, etc. But in terms of restaurants, I mean, one of my favorites for a number of years has been Tricky's on Rua de Boa Vista.
Yep.
Fantastic, super creative, really fun. I mean, it's a classic in Lisbon, but Ramiro. I mean, I've never had a bad meal there because I always order the same thing. But it's such an atmosphere.
Of typical Portuguese.
Totally, and for many good reasons. Besides that, let's see.
On the trendy spots, what do you see now?
Trendy spots.
Around Praça das Flores, anything that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, Magnolia is a great one in Praça das Flores. Really nice, like indoor-outdoor feeling to it, so I really like that one. Recently, I went to Geografia, which is a nice one, near Janelas Verdes. It's a cool spot, very like laid back, cool feeling to it. So yeah, so many great restaurants in Lisbon. There's a new place that opened I've been meaning to try that says they have perfect New York pizza slices, and I'm from New York, so
and Italian
and Italian. So I don't believe it yet, but I'm gonna try and then I'll let you know.
Okay.
Perfect.
We'll
Top 3
save
of
this one.
bars.
Top 3 bars. Imprensa is one of my favorites. Excellent place. Super fun, cool vibe, inside, outside.
You got married, right?
I did get married.
Maybe you cannot know all of this.
Where else? So this is kind of a deep cut, but in the hotel Loch de Santa Joana, in the basement of the hotel, which is a former monastery. There's a Japanese listening bar down there that's really cool. They have nice cocktails, and it's like completely hidden. You really have to know and go down the elevator. But really, I think there's some places in Lisbon making amazing cocktails, and this is one of them. And the other place, man, I don't remember the name of it. I have to think of it. But it's a cocktail bar that literally has only one table,
Yeah.
and it has a curtain. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Which one? Where?
I don't remember. It's in Príncipe Real.
Near Largo do Carmo? No.
Yeah.
Toca da Raposa? or
Yeah, Toca
something?
da
No,
Raposa.
that's a good one, but that's not what I'm thinking
No?
of.
That one?
Just one bar?
It's just literally one table inside the bar because it's so small.
We will save this for the subtitle.
Yeah,
So you have
we
to
will
go
find.
and check it out on the description of the
Exactly.
podcast if you really want to know this one.
Yeah, it's a deep cut, but I'll find it for you guys.
We will find.
But do you feel the vibe of like restaurants, bars, like growing, getting like maybe more cosmopolitan? Like I don't know the word to describe it, but do you feel the city is like alive?
100%. I mean, I think it's one of the coolest things about Lisbon is that you have a really dynamic, like sort of restaurant sector. I think part of it's driven by tourism and part of it's driven by curiosity of locals and expats that are living here. And I think it's a lot that's constantly changing. So many cool restaurants. One of the things I love is that because you have these old buildings, you have so many restaurants that are really small and they specialize. They do something really, really well, right? And to me, this is really cool because you go in, you have a very personal vibe, you have something that's excellent. It could be Lebanese food, it could be a slice of pizza, it could be something else. And it's part of it is actually related to the way the physical environment is, because if you want 400 square meters for a restaurant, you're not going to find it.
It's
very
impossible
few,
here.
it's impossible, right? I had a client ask me for that. I said that there's no way.
And the same for a house.
What do you think?
And also the same for a house. Sometimes you listen to a guy that is trying to buy a 400 meter with 10 cars to park, blah blah. It's not doesn't exist, not in Lisbon.
Exactly.
It's just the reality of the city. The city was projected a long time ago for different needs, and most of the historic center gets back like 200, 300 years old since the earthquake.
Yeah.
So yeah, they wouldn't predict 300 years from the earthquake we would need like these big houses and all this, because back then it was not the reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just remember one of my favorite restaurants that I need to put in there, which is, so I'm from New York, I'm American, but my whole family's Italian. My last name's Italian. And so to me, it's like some of the best simple pasta dishes in Lisbon. It's called alla paranza. Alla paranza. Do you know this one?
Yeah.
It's a really nice one. And I love going there just for like a simple
Pasta.
dish of pasta.
Yeah.
That's what my dad would call it, a dish of pasta.
You speak Italian?
No.
Your parents speak Italian?
Very,
Great.
very bad Italian, because my dad grew up in really a Italian-American neighborhood in the Bronx in New York City. But like the way that they spoke, but he was born in the US, and the way that they spoke Italian was very much like a pidgin Italian dialect. So anything that he says, I don't even think is real Italian words. And if I repeat it, I'll sound even worse. So.
You stop that.
Exactly.
Okay. So Peter, knowing that the Portuguese market is hard to navigate, we end up meeting each other. So you started by meeting Lucas, then Lucas introduced me to you. We had these first ideas in which you brought us some projects about, you started with the commercial side, about the how to say, like the clinics that you were trying to figure out how to assemble them in Lisbon, so more on the commercial side. Mm-hmm. But we started to speak about residential because, as you know, that's what we do and what we focus on mostly. Did you felt it was important for you to start to do it with local partners, or did you have this idea, maybe I will do it on my own, or what was the process in order?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely started on my own, right? And maybe you don't know exactly all of this. I'll tell more of the story as well, right? So, for me, actually, in the Portuguese market, that it's common you can buy a building, renovate the apartments, and sell the apartments. This is something that's not common in the States because you don't have like condos, and apartment buildings that are quite small like this. Usually they're much bigger. So this is actually a great way for me to invest, right? So I had the idea, like many people, like, okay, a small building, 4 or 6 apartments, I can buy it, I'll get the right lawyers, I'll get the right team, and we'll renovate it and sell it and deal with whatever headaches come, right? So I got to know Lucas. I got to know you guys a little bit. I think I started sending Lucas some random buildings and say, well, what do you think about this? And I think it was pretty much when he got tired of having me send him buildings, he said, well, hold on, stop sending me this bullshit. Excuse me. What if we did something, why don't you look at something that we've been looking at? We could do something together. And I think that was really where we started to dive a little bit deeper into the residential market. And yes, I think it's great to, as a foreigner, to work with a local partner that has the expertise on something, that we can share mutual expertise on financing, on a different commercial projects versus residential versus different ways to finance and work together and collaborate. But having local partners, this is the time-tested, thing of real estate, right? To collaborate and bring expertise together where you have a mutual benefit where 1 + 1 is 4.
Yeah, we are. I think we are fortunate because you also brought on board that vision that I wouldn't say we miss, but at the same time, because you are used to a market that is much more mature, like of ways of financing, ways of structuring the deal in order, like if we reach this rentability, we do it this way. If we don't, we will do it that way. In terms of like thinking about how to assemble the project itself, how to assemble the SPV. I don't know if that's the name in English or not. Yeah. It is.
SPV is English.
It's English, okay. Special purpose vehicle. Yeah, exactly. So I think also like you brought that valuable knowledge, and definitely a partnership must come from a place in which like we can, like you were saying, like the sum of us it's bigger. So for us it's also like really good to have someone on board like you. But yes, this question came from that perspective that I think it is really important, even for me, like to speak and to give a little bit more context. Lucas is much more used to the development side, and when we became business partners, I brought some other perspectives, but he definitely brought this more specific knowledge that is really important because time is money, and especially doing development in Portugal. Time can vary a lot depending on your knowledge. Mm-hmm. What this means, sometimes you save time by making a decision that you know the municipal hall will approve, while if you start by going, maybe I will do this different, and then you go there, then they say no, then you get back to you, then you go to the architect, so you lose a lot of times these small details. And I think Lucas' experience is really helpful, because definitely, at least we will try to control what we can control. Mm-hmm. And for that, past experience is so important in Portugal. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah. Talking about the fact that in America, all this kind of condo is not the big concept there. How is it to be an American on the meeting of the condominium of your building? Because I know that all the old ladies there like you very much.
Well, let me set the scene for the condominium. Okay. So we bought this apartment. Immediately we started renovation. You know, the building, it's actually it's a nice building. It has a lot of owners that live there, because, you know, in many in places in Lisbon, it can be all rentals, all Airbnbs, something like this. So we were very happy that it wasn't like this. And we started renovation, and the old lady said, "Well, what's going on up there? Some American bought this place and we don't know." And they were asking a lot of questions, and I was very nervous. But the good news is then I finally got to sit down with them, which happened to be in the condominium meeting where they were proposing to vote for an elevator. We got to sit down and start to discuss and to meet each other, and our apartment's on the 4th floor, so an elevator, yes, of course, it's the top floor, of course we want an elevator. I was very happy to vote yes. They were happy that I was on the same page with them, and then we started to create a relationship from there. But yes, in hour 3, all in Portuguese, 3-4 old ladies and me, it was an interesting experience. But you know, sometimes this is what you have to do to create the relationship.
Yeah,
exactly.
It applies for every area, including the condominium meetings.
Yes, maybe they follow your podcast. They'll learn.
I doubt it. Yes, I think like maybe on the next episode we can speak a little bit more specifically about the project that we have currently going on. Mm-hmm. Once maybe we have some news on next steps and project approvals and all that. So we will maybe leave that for a second part. Mm-hmm. Peter, it was really nice to have you here. I think your perspective and the way you share your perspective is really valuable for anyone listening or viewing the podcast. So thank you so much for being here and accepting our invitation.
Of course, it's my pleasure. And I think you guys are doing great work to educate people about how to enter and be part of the market, which is a really great source of wealth creation, but still has pitfalls and things to learn. So congratulations for the work you're doing. I'm glad to be part of it.